Hey everyone, happy Friday. So it is raining pretty hard today, so I'm not going to take my phone out and try to video while I run. So instead of showing you my run today, I thought I'd use this opportunity to feature the run I had earlier this week on Tuesday the 12th with the incredible Kiara St. James, who is the executive director of the New York Trans Advocacy Group, or NITAG. Turns out Kiara and I are from the same hometown in Beaumont, Texas, and it was a lot of fun to have my very first running mate be her, and we had a really great conversation. So, without further ado, here is my running chat with Kiara St. James on Tuesday. Ran about 3.5-ish miles, which is why I made up the extra on Wednesday. All right, enjoy. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, good. It's good to see your face.
Yeah. I'm fine. Good to see your face. Good to see that you're out.
Oh yeah, I'm out all right. It's nice to take a Zoom call, not sitting at my desk.
You're out in the country. I heard a car pass by.
Oh, I am in the country, like for reals.
Oh, okay.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hey, Jumbo family. Jumbo is Swahili for hello. My name is Sarah St. James. She, her, goddess, founder and executive director of New York Transgender Advocacy Group. That's
Awesome.
where I should be looking. So,
Thank you for joining me on this run today.
no, thank you for inviting me.
So, I'm doing these runs to raise awareness about trans folks and the issues that we're facing, and also to bring some attention to some of the more badass leaders in our community who are doing really incredible things. And I'm really honored that you're willing to take some time today to to talk to us about some of the things that you're doing and what's going on in the community and what people need, you know. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you want to just take it away, tell us a little bit about what you do, what you've been
Yeah.
up to.
So one of the reasons why New York Transgender Advocacy Group was founded was to address policies and how it impacted the TGNC community, in particular, Black trans women, right? Oftentimes I would be in rooms where there would be these cascades of data that show Black trans women having the highest HIV transmission rate, having the highest unemployment rate, the homicide rate, and also understanding like it's not because we're Black and trans, but it's because of policies that don't affirm us. And so just really realizing like I wanted to create an organization that addresses the root causes of discrimination, the root causes of why, the social drivers, when you speak about Black trans women, are the way they are. And until we are able to address the root causes, nothing's going to change, right? And so that is why NITAG was founded, to really center the work and empower my community, empower them to understand that they have power. Oftentimes I speak to my folks, we hear the saying, speak power to power, right? Well, speak truth to power, right? I change it to speak power to power. Your truth is your power, right? Understand that we also have power, we also have leverage, and we have to start tapping into that, and like I don't really like this narrative of the government tells us what to do. Like, no, we tell the government, we elect the government. So, and so that's been my mindset, like since the beginning of NITAG, is really giving back, bringing, like unleashing the power that we don't realize that we have, and like just really educating the community, not just here in New York State, but nationally, that they have power, we have power, and we just have to learn how to utilize it, be very strategic with it, and that's been like really my life mission, is really, I came into this work organically, just because, as a child, I wasn't thinking about, oh, when I grow up, I want to be an activist. Like that wasn't part of the plan for me. I would, my goals and my visions for myself was to join the military. I come from a military family. I'm originally from Beaumont, Texas. And so I saw how a lot of my uncles and aunts went on to have amazing careers, big houses, nice cars, right? They had all those things that were afforded to them because they joined the military, and then from there, with the help of the GI Bill, they were able to get an education. So that was pretty much my goal, But then, you know, as I discovered that, oh, I'm kind of different. Like I'm a trans woman, so it's going to be different for me than my cis relatives who just took it for granted. Like it just, when you graduate from high school, just join the military, right? And so that started me on a journey, and then like what I found was that there was a lot of discrimination that I was up against, right? Personal discrimination, like trying to get a job and people looking at me and like, oh, well, what are you? Are you a girl? Are you a boy? That type of stuff, that really impacted my trajectory. On top of that, there was discrimination around HIV, right? People were dying because Ryan White funding was being cut, and so I find myself like, I'm part of these communities, and I want to fight for us to have resources, and so that's really started me on this trajectory of advocacy that I'm still in. One of my goals, long-term goals, is to really cultivate new leadership, right, and to really make sure that when I minimize my presence, that the work is still getting done and that there's amazing leaders still continuing the work, speaking their truth to power, right? Speaking their power to power. And so that's really been my focus now, is really helping leaders, because we have a lot of leaders, right? But helping them to really tap into what it means to be a leader, and giving them a platform to use their voices to impact change.
It's amazing. I have so many questions and so many things I want to say. First of all, thank you for all that you do and for being you. And, you know, the path that we lay out for ourselves so often, has twists and turns that we would never have wanted for ourselves necessarily, or would have written for ourselves. And a lot of the time, those twists and turns are made by other people and the society we live in. The fact that you're trans shouldn't mean that you wouldn't be able to take whatever path it is that you want, but society laid out some barriers for you into what was accessible. Is the military accessible for trans people? Is home ownership accessible for trans people? These things that you originally wanted to do, but taking those twists and turns and turning it into something that's yours and something beautiful and powerful. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for the work you do. But yeah, we both grew up in the same hometown in Southeast Texas.
Yes.
So did you, for me, I didn't come out as trans until I left Texas. I knew I was queer, and I knew that that was a bad thing to be. That's what everyone made it clear, that it wasn't good to be gay or lesbian. Didn't really know what trans was. Did you come out when you were in Southeast Texas, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, I would say that it was a coming out, stepping back in, and coming out again. So it was many layers to it, right? Like I always, from the time I was like 5 years old, I knew that I was, like I was different from my brothers and sisters and my cousins. I remember when I talked about, I'm going to my boyfriend's house at 7 years of age, right? And my dad was like, "So you going where? What did you just say?" And I couldn't compute because I always heard my mom when she talked about going to go visit her girlfriends. So it was like, well, mama has girlfriends, and like, don't we have like, so guys have boyfriends, right? And and then I quickly was disciplined and understood, like, no, you don't have guys don't have boyfriends, right? At that time, and well, in my family, I should say. And so, so then it was like this retraining that happened where um, I had to. My dad enrolled me in every masculine sport, made me watch like boxing, football, basketball. Like I was in school when I wasn't even in school, right? Just because gender policing was very strong in my household when it came to me in regards to me. Um, when I interact, like I was told not, I couldn't play with my sisters or the female girls because they did not want that influence on me, that type of stuff. So I went through that period. I also went through a period of abuse, abuse, and it wasn't so. It was a lot of layers in my family, right? Like my father was a player, right? And so a lot of times it was issues that between my mom and my dad that my mom took out on me, which resulted in me being put in foster care. Um, and then when I was put in foster care, I had to navigate differently. I kind of, by that time, I learned not to be so open, just because when I was open, I was, silenced. And so it took a journey. It took me like really moving to Atlanta with my partner at that time, and really being able to finally express who I am. So the journey was difficult. And even like now, I'm still on a journey, even though I identify as a Black trans woman, heterosexual. The journey is still unfolding for me. And I don't think that you ever get to a point where you can say that you've stopped transitioning. Transitioning to me now looks like I'm finally able to tap into my feminine energy in a way that I didn't before. And I know it may sound kind of strange, but like I always identified as female, but I often had to navigate through systems very masculine, very like my energy. And so I never really was able to tap into just wanting to dress pretty, to wear my hair in pretty styles. That's something that was gradual. And I would say like last year was the first year where I really tapped 100% into that energy, and like,
What changed last year that kind of brought you to that place?
we were talking the other day, and I told you about the passing of my grandmother and my aunt in a 3-month period. That had a lot to do with me just realizing how fleeting life is, and like, you know, um, we're not going to be, we're not going to be here, right? Eventually we're all going to transition, have that final physical transition, right? And then I got involved in a relationship. So like passing the two of like the matriarchs of my family, um, finally like being in a relationship with somebody who was actively pursuing me, and I'm like, you really want to be in a relationship with me? And like that allowed me to tap into that side of me, just because I have always, I've always had like masculine energy. And so um it's exciting to tap into that side of me, but also there is vulnerability there, and so I just have to learn how to navigate that.
Yeah, um, I identify really deeply with that. I think as we get older and as we come into ourselves, and also as our relationships with other people in our lives change and our family changes, and certainly the loss of really influential and important family members uh, along the maternal line, I think especially
Yeah.
that that transition from family members in the physical plane to ancestors,
Yes.
really, it's a catalyst for understanding and appreciating ourselves more
Mhm.
and the time that we have on this earth more.
and what are we doing with it, um, so I deeply empathize with that.
Yeah,
Having lost my mom in the last year as well.
yeah.
Oh, hold on, a UPS truck is going by. I want to ask a couple of things. One about what you've done with NITAG that you're especially, I guess, like proud of. You talked about part of your life goal, and NITAG's goal is to help build leadership among the community, like real, authentic, and what I heard was like sustainable leadership. There are a lot of leaders, but what does leadership in the long run look like? And what are you excited and proud about with NITAG and helping to work toward that?
Yeah, so one of my major one of the major policies I'm very proud that NITAG was able to finally see come to fruition was the passing of gender bipartisan support of Gender Expression and Discrimination Act. That was
Tell us about gender. Some folks may not know about that.
yeah,
The legacy of gender.
the legacy of gender. It started when the TGNC community got thrown under the bus, rolled over, drove past by our LGBT cis brothers and sisters. Right? We were before there was gender, there was SONDA, Sexual Orientation and Discrimination Act, which covered gender expression. But what happens when respectability politics come into play is folks start looking out for themselves and start seeing like what's the best way to get this bill passed with that covers the majority of us, right? And so what they decided was to take language away that addressed the protections of TGNC New Yorkers. And when they did that, Sonda was able to pass, which left TGNC folks, non-conforming folks, non-binary folks, left us exposed, left us with no protections. And so within that same day, I believe it was Charles King, Joanne Prevelli, forgive me, Joanne, if I forget your name, they actually started working on the language for gender, for the bill we now know as Gender Expression and Discrimination Act. And why that bill is so important is because it addresses like discrimination, like with public accommodations, healthcare. I know that here in New York City, like when I was in the process of going to school, like I was bullied out of school because there was no protections at that time when I was at Brooklyn, BMTC here in Brooklyn. And so, so things like that it was an everyday occurrence for TGNC folks. And so gender helped. It really helps to improve the quality of life. And that's how I describe it. It's just a way to improve quality of life for TGNC, but all New Yorkers, not just TGNC and NB New Yorkers, but all New Yorkers. It's a way for us to have access to better schooling systems, better hospitals.
One thing I love about that bill, about the human rights law in New York, is that when it covers public accommodations like hospitals,
Yeah.
the law itself actually is very robust in the things it covers. And some of the other things are like billiard clubs and ice cream parlors and soda jerks, but like hotels and grocery stores and movie theaters and like anywhere life happens in public, right?
Right.
Which is the vast majority of places, as well
and
as.
I can tell you that I've had experiences in Lower Manhattan, Broadway, the McDonald's there, where me and another one of my trans sisters were patrons there, ordering food, then when we were leaving, we had to use the bathroom. And I remember the woman, I had finished first, I was washing my hands, and I did that long before the government tells us to wash our hands, right? I was doing that, I was washing my hands and all that stuff. But she was in the stall, and yes, she has a very deep voice. And so the woman in one of the stalls came out. She goes, "Is that a man? Is that?" I'm like, "No, there's no man in here." And so she ran out and got management. And so management came into the bathroom, and yeah, it wasn't a pretty scene and all that. And of course, what happened was that it wasn't just management; it was other customers. It was like the entire store against me and my girlfriend at that
Just
time.
worried about where it is you're using the bathroom, which is something we all do,
Yes,
right?
yeah, yeah. That's why
Shocker
agenda
to
is so
everybody.
important, and
Yeah.
I actually was just, I'm a student of history, especially Black pioneers in this country, and I think about like Ida B. Wells and um, Madam C.J. Walker, and both of them, they had um, infections of the liver, and a lot of it had to do with holding their water, and the fact that they had to hold their waters for long periods of time, and so I remember like just really talking about that with legislators, like this will, if I'm tired of holding my water, just like when I leave New York City, I got to wait till I get to Albany to relieve myself, like and how the impact on the health system is impacted that way too, in ways that folks don't see. It's not just protections that we should have the right to use a bathroom of our choice, but if we're not allowed access to bathrooms and we're holding our water, the state still is going to have to step in and take care of us via Medicaid and things of that nature. And so I don't think people really realize like how all these things are connected. Like gender is not just about having access to resources, but it's also means that it takes less pressure off the state when it comes to taking care of us in recovery. Once we do have urinary tract infection, those type of things, we have to look at legislation that way too, because oftentimes people don't care about people like you. They care about how does it impact my wallet, right? And we have to remember that. And so there's ways that you have to really push bills and agendas, and like gender, we finally got it here in New York State, but we are one of only 16 states, I believe, who has gender, and so we have to remember that this fight is still ongoing. I love the Cuban principle, where it's really an African principle of leave no one behind. And like, I don't know if I was telling you this the other day, like Cuban medical schools, they have a system to where like, it doesn't matter if 90% of the class graduated. Everyone in that class gets an F until there's 100% graduation, right? And what that means is the 90% has a responsibility of making sure the 10% that did not pass, that they pass, right? And that's how
Oh,
they're
that's
able to,
that feels really radical. Yeah.
it's very radical.
As opposed to the dog eat dog situation we
Yes,
have here, right? Yeah, just trying to climb on top of each other and push
yeah,
each other down.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I love that. I did not know that, so
yeah.
thank you for that. I was also thinking yesterday during my run, I talked about name changes for trans people and how important they are, and being able to access identity documents that accurately reflect who we are, and how 9 out of 10 of us don't have matching identity documents. And when you add that onto the issue of just like restroom access or medical access or applying for jobs, all of these things snowball with each other, right? So if somebody doesn't have protections in seeking employment or keeping employment, and they also don't have identity documents that reflect who they are, that means that they're not going to be able to stay employed, so they're going to be on public benefits. It means that they're probably going to be on unemployment insurance, or they're just not going to be able to keep giving to the economy in a way that they otherwise could if only they weren't trans, or if only there were protections for them because they're trans, right? Because people are terrible.
Yeah.
And, you know, using restrooms, if you don't have an identity document that says, no, I am female and I belong in this restroom, and you don't have legal protections, well, then you've got higher instances of interactions with the police who are also racist, right? And homophobic and transphobic, which puts people at higher risk of being involved in the criminal justice system and
The prison pipeline, yep.
yeah, exactly. And so, and all of that comes out of taxpayer dollars, right? Like police get paid by taxes, prisons get paid by taxes. But you're right, when you're approaching it in a policy advocacy way, you have to make the argument that this is about, you have to pull at people's purse strings in order for them to care, more often than just being able to make the human argument of like, no human should be treated this way, right? But when you start to pull in things about like criminal justice and the prison pipeline and other things, people start to care less again too, because that's just something people don't want to think about. And our legislators are not immune to that. And, you know, all of that has a straight line back to racism. Not, you know, not just transphobia, but racism. So
yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I do know, like, you know, a lot of the policies that we have on the books, they were always rooted in race, right? You know, the child trafficking. What was it called? Like Jack Johnson was a famous heavyweight boxer, African American, early 20th century, and he liked the company of young white women, and so they tried to entrap him, and so they created that law, like when you go from state to state. I forget the name, like I forget the name of it, but like a human trafficking law. But a lot of these laws are rooted in keeping people in systems, right? Like one of the things that I am looking to do and get a lot of support on is universal basic income, right? And why that is so important, especially when we talk about COVID-19, and we're seeing that the most impacted communities are once again Black and Brown communities, but yet everyone can be impacted by COVID-19, you know, and so we have to make sure that folks who don't have health care, they get health care. Folks who are homeless, that they're housed, right? And so the systems that we currently operate in, I call them culture of scarcity systems. And what that means is, like, if you are a single mother, right, and you have 3 children, and you have a job, that job is not, you're not able to provide for your children, you're not able to provide, pay rent, what you'll do is you'll stop working just to get welfare benefits so you can have your rent covered, right? And then if they find out that you are secretly saving money, or you open a savings account, you're once again punished for opening up a savings account, because you're supposed to be poor. You should not be thinking about saving money, right? And so what it does is it encourages generational poverty. And so those are like what I am about, like really working with other folks to address how to dismantle that system that depends on generational poverty, right? To keep the prison system occupied, right? To, you know, to continue to support and make 1%ers even more wealthy, right? And it's like we have to address that through policies and really driving home the message that when we're all giving like the minimum of support, and not even, I don't even want to say the minimum, when we're all giving living wages, when we're all giving what we need to provide for ourselves and our family, it makes the world a much better place. It makes New York City, makes New York State, it makes the United States of America a much better place to live. You'll see, you know, just addressing that alone, you know, just addressing culture of scarcity and how, you know, it impacts communities of color, you know, and Black communities.
I'm going to talk about something that you mentioned earlier, which is just like that so much of what we experience is based on policies that may not be racist per se or transphobic per se, but they have a direct impact on our community, and particularly in a racist way. Something I've been thinking about a lot is in Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist,
Mhm.
he talks a lot about the idea that there are no like race silent or race neutral policies. They are either racist or anti-racist.
Yeah.
And anti-racist means that they are expressly and proactively and explicitly addressing race and counteracting the systems of racism that this country was built on. And anything that doesn't do that is racist, right? Even if it doesn't talk about race at all, it's racist because it's not fighting racism.
Right.
And I think it's an incredible argument, and I wonder about how that applies to transphobia in policies. Do you think that there's a correlation to, like, if there's a policy that doesn't address transphobia in some way, do you think it's transphobic? And what does anti-transphobia look like, do you think, in policymaking?
Right. So yeah, so everything is rooted, as you said, in racism, and in particular, it's rooted in anti-Blackness. And so when you talk about why it's important for us to have policies with specific language, is so that there's clarification to businesses, individuals who may want to discriminate, right? So any policies, especially in regards to gender, is it expressly says in there transgender, gender nonconforming. It says that for a reason, so that folks know that it's illegal to discriminate against our community, right? And so any bill that does not have that language in it, it may not be intentionally, by the writer of the bills, seen that way. It might not have been their intent, but we know how landlords, business owners can use the lack of clarification as a means of discriminating. So it takes on, that's why it's really important to have clarification of, like, does this mean all sexes? So all sexes mean all sexes, no matter whether you're cis female, cis male, trans female, trans male, yes, all sexes, right? Gender nonconforming, all sexes, right? It's important to have that language in there, because if you don't, people love to find loopholes. People have unconscious bias that shows up in their work with the public. And so that's why it's really important to really make sure that we write out in clear language, this population must be protected because, right? Because unconscious bias is real. We all have it, and it's something that we have to remind folks when they create these bills for us. And that's why we should be in the rooms when they're creating these bills for us, so we can say, nope, that's the wrong language. That's not inclusive of all of us. So it's really important that we are in those rooms, right? And like, I do feel that any civil rights bill that does not specifically identify the TGNC community is a bill that can be seen as transphobic, because we have to be in that bill, right? And so unfortunately, it has to be written out. It can't be an assumption that we're protected. It has to be a clear written words, like, oh, transgender, gender non, okay, we're protected. Because if not, as I say, unconscious bias shows up, in our leadership, in our business owners, and so we have to be like the watchdogs to make sure that happens. I don't know if I answered your question though, sorry.
No, you did. You totally did. I completely agree with you. I think that, without express language that covers groups who are, multiply and historically marginalized, policies and laws are ripe for abuse and for interpretation, and interpretation means that it's whatever is convenient to the person interpreting it. So, we see
It's
that
not
with,
us.
yeah, it's not us. It's never going to be us, right? We're never actually going to get the benefit of that. And we see that with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 right now, which is the federal law that protects against sex discrimination in the workplace. And a lot of courts across the country have interpreted that law to cover gender nonconforming people, people who vary from sex stereotypes in some way, and specifically trans people. And even here in New York, in the Second Circuit, the court has found that it covers discrimination based on sexual orientation. But right now, that law is in front of the Supreme Court of the United States, and it's going to be interpreted to either cover LGBTQ people or not, right? And it's because, you know, when they said sex discrimination, they weren't thinking about LGBTQ people necessarily, or they were, but they didn't say it. And it's, you know, without that sort of express language, it can really be interpreted to our benefit or against us. And, you know, a lot of us are kind of holding onto our seats because we're worried to see how this turns out. And at least in New York and in New York City, folks will continue to be covered because of our state and local laws. But most folks in the country, and especially where you and I are from in Texas, are not going to be so lucky. So, but do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share that you didn't get to talk about that you want to throw out there before we wind up for the day?
No, well, thank you, Milo, for this opportunity. Yeah, I just want to, we all have a role. We all have to start using our individual and collective power to really impact change. This year, as we've seen, is very critical. You know, we're dealing with COVID-19, shutting down systems. We have a duty not to go back to normal, but we have a duty to fight and demand a new world of possibilities. Even eradicating that word normal. What does normal mean? As long as people are still being penalized for expressing their gender, you know, the way that they choose, as long as people are still being discriminated against simply because they didn't have resources to attend a much more wealthier school district. If we're not fighting and seeing how all these things are connected, and we need to fight on the other side to make sure that on the other side of this pandemic, that we're all protected, that we all have health care, we all are housed, then we have learned nothing from this pandemic. And so I just really want us all to really do our part, you know, to fight for that world. Because, you know, I don't know, I'm just really fearful that if we don't seize the moment now to start strategizing of what that new world should look like, we're going to be lost. And I don't want us to be lost, you know, and I don't know how much fight left I have in me, you know, to continue to fight those systems. So I really just would ask everyone to do your part and join me and Milo to really make that new world a world that's inclusive, affirming, and that we're all free to be ourselves and have access to resources the way that we rightfully should.
Yeah, I love that. Like, let's seize this opportunity to create some radical trans futures that that not only include us but celebrate us, and in which we are always at the table and we are leading a charge, and not always, you know, burning out in our leadership as quickly as we do. You got me, I'll do it. Call to action works for me. All right, let's do it. Kiara, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed running with you. You're my first running mate. And, you know, I'll be doing this till November. So maybe if you want to, you can join me again later on. I would love to reconnect and keep this conversation going.
Yeah, let's keep going. I love that. I usually say that. Let's keep the conversation going. Yeah, so absolutely. And don't forget to register, folks. Please register. It's important.
To vote?
To vote, yes.
Yes, your vote counts. Every vote counts.
Yes, and the census too. Don't forget about the census.
Oh, yeah. All right, so do the census, register to vote, fight for trans resilience and trans equity, and also check out NITAG. I'll leave a link below this video for you to see the good work that they're doing, and keep up with Kiara St. James. She's a fierce and incredible, brilliant person, and you're going to want to keep an eye on her. Thank you so much for your time, Kiara. And all right, that's 4 more miles down, everybody, toward the goal for the marathon. Thank you for your support, and we will see you tomorrow.